Welcome back. Now this, the crisis in Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro says that the government is close to convening a special assembly with powers to rewrite the Constitution and override other branches of government. It comes a day after two leading opposition members were dragged from their homes and thrown in military prison after the country's Supreme Court accused them of violating the terms of their house arrest by criticizing Maduro. The White House condemned what it called the, quote, Maduro dictatorship for the arrest, saying in a statement this: the United States holds Maduro, who publicly announced just hours earlier that he would move against his political opposition, personally responsible for the health and safety of Mr. Lopez and Mr. Ledesma and any others seized. Joining us right now, Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. And Judge, good to see you.
Good morning.
The country's Supreme Court is at the heart of the political crisis in Venezuela, isn't it?
Right. And you may actually end up with two Supreme Courts in Venezuela, the one that was appointed under the old Constitution and the one that will be appointed under the new. Look, this is a system totally alien to our own. This would be akin to Congress rewriting the Constitution. In America, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Theoretically, it doesn't always happen this way, theoretically, Congress is subject to the Constitution and it can't change its terms. But in Venezuela, they just elected a new Congress with the express power of changing the Constitution so that Maduro can become a legal dictator, that is, a dictator under the laws of Venezuela. So can you imagine Donald Trump arresting Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer in the middle of the night and putting them in a military prison because they went on YouTube and criticized him?
Oh,
that's the functional equivalent of what just happened in Venezuela.
You're right. That's incredible.
So, look, we have something called natural rights, which understand that our rights come from our humanity. So I say to law students, if the First Amendment were repealed, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Do we still have freedom of speech? Answer, yes, because it's a human right. The Constitution doesn't grant it. The Constitution just protects it. Not so in Venezuela.
Yeah, not so.
So where do we go from here? I mean, that's the main question.
You know, the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, announced a lot of very heavy sanctions on them. I happen to think sanctions don't work, even though these sanctions are targeted at Maduro and individuals that work with him and support him. I don't know what the president wants to do. Oil is always an implication with Venezuela. I really don't know what the answer is. There's probably even a suggestion of military action to get Maduro out there. That I think that's not on the front.
Is this turning into a humanitarian crisis?
It already is a humanitarian crisis.
Of monumental proportions.
It has been for months, if not years.
It shows you that socialism eventually ends. As Margaret Thatcher famously said, the problem with socialism is sooner or later you run out of other people's money. Yeah. And that's what they're learning there.
But the Wall Street Journal editorial page, which we talked about, was advocating even tougher sanctions in terms of targeting the nation's oil, targeting the state-owned and run oil company PDVSA, the oil that's exported to our refineries along the Gulf Coast, like really trying to put a stranglehold on that source of funds.
I understand what the Wall Street Journal wants to do, and there are colleagues and cousins, and I happen to agree with them, but sanctions usually hurt the people you don't want to hurt, and the elite, the ruling class, somehow manages to evade them. How much effect did sanctions have on the Castro brothers? They lasted for 50 years.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My question is, America can't be everywhere at once. We're having problems with North Korea. We're having problems with the Middle East. Who can actually step in?
There is no push from anybody in the Republican Party or the Trump administration, as I can detect it, for military action in Venezuela, because this is not a direct, immediate threat to the United States, unlike the crazy person in North Korea, who is a direct threat to the U.S. Venezuela's not.
One of the country's most cited legal scholars, longtime Seventh Circuit Judge Richard Posner, recently suggested that the Supreme Court here in the U.S. should have 19 members, not 9.
You know,
he also says judges should retire at 80 years old.
Right, and he's 78, so I guess he's not talking about himself going on the Supreme Court. He is, let me tell you a little bit about him. He is arguably, if you ask him, he'll tell you this, the smartest federal judge in the country. I say that because he is the most frequently cited by other federal judges, including the Supreme Court of the United States. He teaches full-time at the University of Chicago Law School, arguably a top 5 law school, while he's still a federal appellate judge. I think that this suggestion will go nowhere. I think this suggestion is born out of his frustration that the Supreme Court always seems to be 4 to 5, 5 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 4.
Well, what's wrong with retirement at 80?
They're effectively his bosses. Well, if you begin tinkering with the Constitution, where do you stop? Right now, federal judges, including justices of the Supreme Court, sit until they decide to leave. It's a lifetime appointment. I got to tell you something about him, how smart he is. I interviewed him once, and I said, you seem to be producing a book or 2 books a year. How do you do it? He took out an old-fashioned yellow legal pad. He said, I fill 14 pages with pencil. Wow. 6 days a week. I give myself a break on Sunday.
That's great.
Yes, and apparently he's still doing it at age 78. God bless him.
That's great.
Well, just really quickly, I know why that you don't want people, Supreme Court justices retiring at 80, because it encourages them to make rash decisions, to make their mark before their term is up, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
that they might not make decisions just based on the law, but they make decisions based on their own.
Candidly, I didn't know about this suggestion until your producers sent it to me a few hours ago. Every once in a while, a suggestion like this bubbles up. The most famous or infamous is FDR's effort to pack the court, which was so unpopular, he tried to claim he had nothing to do with it. So I don't think this is going to go anywhere.
All right, we'll leave it there. Judge, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you.
Judge
Have a nice day.
Napolitano there.